time management skills, being able to multitask, being a clear communicator, because sometimes
Okay.
you might see something that you know isn't right, but you might, it's like you really have to get the point across to the person. And the other thing that's really key for us is that we don't want to come across like the grammar police. I think that's a good way to get into it if you're a word person and you've done a lot of writing, or even if you've done a lot of reading and you
Okay.
understand kind of how to communicate. That's a good foundation.
So joining me today is Chris Hughes, and he is a copy editor at Publix. So Chris, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. So let's go ahead and get started. Chris, can you please explain to me in the most simple way what a copy editor does?
So one of my coworkers described it best, where we are like kind of like the whipped cream and cherry and chocolate sauce on top of your ice cream. So
Okay.
we basically will take kind of raw material, like what we have a series of writers, and they'll send us copies. So it could be anything from like an internal company newsletter,
Okay.
or emails to staff, or to certain departments. And for us, as a grocery store, we have a lot of communications that go out to the stores, to
Hmm.
store managers, and to employees in the corporate office, and
Yeah.
at many different levels. So the way that Publix has it set up is that we see material several times. So
Okay.
our first pass through is say we get an article. So what we're looking to do first is to make sure that the grammar is correct, that the formatting is correct, that it follows our guidelines as far as spacing, and kind
Okay.
of like factual, not like, or like more like mechanical things like that.
Okay. Okay.
So then our next pass through is we'll look at ways to make it better. So one of the things that we do is that we try to put ourselves in the shoes of the person reading it.
Okay.
So as a copy editor, you want to make sure that what the message you're getting across is clear and concise,
Hmm.
and that the person reading it is going to understand the message that you're trying to send. And that would,
Okay.
go for anything as well, whether it was a book or a newspaper article or
Okay.
magazine, anything that's going out to the public. A lot of times when you're writing, you're kind of in the zone and you're thinking about things to say and things to write for yourself. But the good thing about a copy editor is that we can kind of have that outside view. We'll have a
Okay.
look at whether or not the message is getting across, or if
Okay.
it's easy to understand, or if there's any questions somebody might have. So that's something that we do as well. And then we'll send it back to the writer at that point, and then it goes through a bunch of different channels, and we see it several
Okay.
times. And then by the end, our job is basically just to proofread it, so other people have reviewed it and have approved it. And then at this point, we're running it through spell check and, things like that, and to make sure that everything's grammatically correct
Okay.
and good to go. So when it's released, there are no errors, especially if it's
Yeah.
something in print. You don't want
Yeah.
something in print to have an error, because that looks bad for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of what we do on a daily basis.
Okay, amazing. And now, what made you want to get into this career path, and how did you get your start in it?
So I kind of took a winding path to what I
Okay.
do now. So when I went to school initially for broadcasting journalism,
Okay.
and I worked at several different television stations along the way. And about 15 years ago or so, stations started to get websites and put more content on those websites.
Okay.
And because of my background, and I really always enjoyed writing and, reading newspapers and
Mm,
magazines and things, websites, things like that, it's like you kind of just pick up ways
yeah.
people write, and, ways to think things to get across. So I kind of, ventured into copy editing a lot of the websites work for the stations. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I it just got difficult with there's a lot of like crazy hours in TV and nights and
Mm,
weekends, and I had my kids were getting older, getting into school age and playing sports, so I really wanted to have more of a normal work schedule.
okay.
So I did a little freelancing for a while, a lot of this type of work, copy editing and writing and editing. And then just about a year ago, this job at Publix came around, and I live in Lakeland, Florida, and it's in between Tampa and Orlando, and there's not a
Okay.
whole lot as far as, corporations here, but Publix, which is this huge company and
Yeah.
250,000 employees, is based here. And
Okay.
this job came around, and it was a good opportunity and a good fit. So I kind of took a winding path towards um, specifically being a copy editor, but there's a lot of different things that I've done, and it's just one of the things that I had a good skill set for and enjoy
Yeah.
doing. And I really, it's like if I see bad writing or anything like that out on a website, or it bugs me.
Yeah,
So it's
I
like
can imagine.
there's a lot of different ways to get the point across,
Yeah.
and get your message across clearly and concisely in as few words as possible. And it's kind of the opposite of, when you're in school, you're trying to
The
you
word
get an
count.
assignment, yes, and it's
Yeah.
like, make sure it's 4 pages, but it's like, I might not have 4 pages worth of stuff
Yeah.
to say. So you repeat and use other phrases, and that's when you kind of get to corporate communications or anything, where you're trying to get messages out, it's almost the
Yeah.
opposite. It's like you really need to be
Okay.
concise and clear and as few words as possible, because people are reading a bunch of different stuff, and you have a bunch of different things
Yeah.
pulling at you, and it's like, so get the point across, get your message across, and if people are more interested, they can go in depth and ask questions, but it's like it really is it's like you just got to get things across as easily
Yeah.
as possible. And it's
Yeah.
it's kind of a skill set that you pick up as you go along.
Okay.
We have a lot of younger writers on our team, but the us copy editors have been around the block in journalism and things like that, so it's a good mix.
Okay. And so now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
um for me, I would say that a lot of the interesting things are to learn about what's like all the behind the scenes it takes to
Okay.
make the stores run. So it's like if you go to just do your weekly shopping, and you go through and you pick out this and you pick out that, and then you check out, or you might use self checkout
Yeah.
now or something like that. But you realize it's a bunch of different processes as far as what goes into the pricing, and
Mm,
into how they even pick the products that are on the shelf, especially like for produce and things like that.
okay.
So, and there's so many different departments. So there's like besides like the departments you'd see in the store, like like meat and produce and bakery and all
Yeah.
that, but then there's like a legal department, and of course like marketing and real estate, as far as to
Mm,
get the stores, to pick out where the
yeah.
stores are going to be and things like that. So
Wow.
it's almost like every day is something different, which is really what attracted me to journalism. It's like I don't really do well with the mundane day to day. Like I
Yeah.
like when there's differences, and you never know what you're going to get in a certain day. So I appreciate that, and I also enjoy being organized. Like a big thing with copy editing is kind of like being organized and
Okay.
taking a bunch of different things, and seeing how it all matches together. So we put out a newsletter that goes to our employees, that's 8 pages long, and it goes out once a month, and it's nice and slick and well produced. And so that's a good thing too, to make sure, to keep that process going,
Yeah.
and when that comes out on time, it's always that's a big win. So it's not as fast paced as the journalism world I came from, but
Okay.
there is a lot to enjoy and to get out of it. So I
Yeah.
pretty much enjoy, seeing how, like I said, how everything kind of comes together for not
Okay.
only for our department, but for the company as a whole.
Yeah. And so now on the flip side, what parts of the job are harder, emotionally challenging, or maybe just not so fun?
So another phrase that we use is that we're kind of like the police who write the tickets. So if
Okay.
there's something that we don't like or something, that's not correct grammatically, we'll
Yeah.
write a ticket. And so basically we get a Word document and then track changes is on, or you can add comments and we'll make a comment
Okay.
or, make a red line. But there's other managers who are going to look at it and there's other, department chairs and some of them, the columns, go right up to the top level to the
Mm,
C-suite,
okay.
CEO column and things like that. So while we are the cops who write the tickets, sometimes the judges decide that, they're not going to take our advice, and
Okay.
that could be difficult
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to learn how to pick your battles. And it's like, okay, this one, I'm gonna kind of make a stink
Mm,
about this one, but you don't want to fight for everything because
yeah.
then you don't want to be difficult and you don't want to raise a red flag every time, because then when there's something that you really feel strongly about, the
Yeah.
managers might be like, oh, okay, it's like you don't really want to
Yeah.
to cause a fuss really unless you really feel like you really have to. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's a frustrating thing sometimes, and you kind of get the hang of it. You kind of get, you learn the quirks as you go, and every company's
Hmm.
got their thing where they're gonna kind of go against AP style or whatever like
Okay.
you like your guidelines, and then you learn as you go, and then you kind of, like I said, you pick your battles and you figure
Yeah.
out what's going to work, and you figure out, okay, well, this one I'm going to let go. But then what it does is then the ones that you fight for, you have more success. You have a
I
higher
agree.
success rate of getting that
Yeah.
thing through. So
Yeah.
so it's a balancing act, but it's something that you kind of learn, and you learn as you
Okay.
go along with any job. But yeah, that's the one sometimes it's frustrating that it's like, they really should have took that advice, or this really, when it came out, it didn't make as much sense, it's even been as clear as you thought it might be, but
Yeah.
everything works, and tomorrow's a new day and you just gotta
Exactly.
start fresh.
Yeah. And so now, what do you think that people might underestimate or overestimate about being a copy editor?
So I think what people don't realize is, like, if you see an article online, or if you see a newspaper article, or even in our company newsletter, you'll see the writer of that article, in their byline. So you'll have an article and then it's got the person's name and then the copy underneath.
Hmm.
But I don't think people on the surface realize that there are way more people that touch that article than the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
our case, we'll have a writer on the article, but you could have at least, up anywhere from 4 or 5 to well over a dozen people who
Oh,
um, have had their imprint in that article, and might,
yeah.
offer like a word selection choice or a way to freshen up a quote.
Okay.
If you can kind of, it's one of those, some places, you can't touch a quote because it's what a person said and you don't want to modify that. But other
Yeah.
times you can, massage it a little bit, to make it a little more concise without changing the
Yeah.
meaning. And then some other words, it's like sometimes you'll lay out a piece and you'll realize, well, you need to cut a few words to get it to fit in a certain amount of lines. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of things that are done, from a whole different group of people,
Yeah.
to make an article sing, where somebody might look at it on the surface and say, oh, this person wrote it and did a really good job.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they do, and but it's also a whole group of people that make that happen. So I think that's one thing that when people see things like that on the surface, they don't realize the amount of
Yeah.
time and effort from a whole group of people that go into
Yeah.
to make that article what it is in the end.
Yeah. And so now within copy editing, are there specific niches or specialties that one can go into?
Yes. So and even within our company, there's some of the marketing, is they use what's called like Chicago style, which is
Okay.
more, like a lot of times you find that more in like books. So if I were to get like a manuscript and copy edit a book, um, it would be very difficult for me because I'm not familiar with that
Okay.
style.
Okay.
So you have different aspects of copy editing. So you can do what I do and do more like it's called kind of like more like editorial or journalism pieces
Okay.
like that, or communicating through emails or any other charts or forms or infographics, things like that. And then, like I said, then you can have books, and you can have some of our folks do speeches, they'll edit speeches, and that's a
Okay.
whole different niche because you're editing to somebody speaking. So you want to
Yeah.
know their the way that they speak, their kind of their language or the way that they
Yeah.
emphasize, and you want it to make sense for that. So that's a whole different a different avenue. So pretty much anything that you see that you consume can be edited in a different way. And books are the same way, where they go through this huge process, and some people will read it more to just fact check, and some people will read it more to make it make sense more. And then other
Yeah.
people, we're just doing like proofreading, which is just strictly, making correcting errors basically.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and there are people that just do that, so that just proofread. So there's copy editing, which is more like a blanket, what I've been telling you about, like
Yeah.
where you have more of influence in the product. And then there's other times where people just do proofreading or fact checking, or
Okay.
and then, like I said, copy editing for different mediums, or it's books or speeches, or I've even seen like YouTube videos and things like that, where people will write scripts for those, and then
Okay.
those will get edited as well. So that's kind of an emerging topic in the field too.
Interesting. And so now, who are some of the biggest employers within this field or industry?
Um, I think it's more like larger companies now.
Okay.
A lot of times, smaller ones, it will be more kind of one stop, where a lot of people are writing and sometimes even editing their own material, or hiring freelancers to do it. So there's some
Okay.
publications that I still do a little bit of freelancing for, but that's kind of how I got into it to begin with. And more like smaller magazines and trade journals and things like that, that might not
Okay.
have a gigantic staff like bigger companies will. I
Yeah.
think bigger companies, especially when you like a lot of healthcare, and for us, like retail,
Mm.
big conglomerates will, I think, still employ copy editors
Okay.
without them having to do a lot of writing and other jobs as well. And then
Okay.
in journalism too, especially websites and newspapers, the bigger ones, New
Yeah.
York
Yeah.
Times, places like that. So anywhere that's churning out a bunch of copy. And then, like I mentioned too, if people are interested in in the book world of in fiction and nonfiction,
Right.
and they're
Yeah.
like publishers too, will employ copy editors as well.
Okay. Interesting. And so now, before we got on this call, I had to do a little bit of research on the average salary of a copy editor. So according to Google, it is around the 55 to $65,000 range. From your experience, do you think that this is accurate? What do you think about that range?
It sounds like an accurate range,
Okay.
depending on experience
Yeah, of course.
and how long, you've been in a position. But
Yeah.
that sounds like, ballpark, without
Okay.
getting into specifics and all
Yeah.
sorts of different factors.
Yeah.
That is
Of course.
probably a fair assumption.
Okay,
So
great. So now,
good job, Google.
yeah, good job, Google. So what are some current trends or challenges within this industry, and how do you see it changing in, say, 5 to 10 years?
So for us, and one thing that we've worked on is a company, and how we're going to handle it, and I think a lot of others as well. And you see it in some writing, depending on the size of the website, is how AI factors into writing.
Yeah,
So you want everything to be original, because if you put like a prompt in a chat GPT and they spit out an article, first of all, it's not going to have like that personal flair to it, personal writing style,
yeah,
that the more you read, and the more if you read something that sounds like cold and clinical, you kind of like you get those bells. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this sounds like, might be AI generated. So I think what the trend seemed to be is to kind of use it as a tool, but
Hmm.
not, to replace the process. The other thing is that we have Grammarly, which will point out errors and suggestions, but
Okay.
and by no means is that perfect or even, probably right maybe two-thirds of the time. So there's a lot of times, it will pick up, it doesn't understand, the meaning of the words or maybe
Okay.
terminology that a certain company will use.
Yeah.
So the way that you kind of like have to lead the technology and understand how to use it to make what you do better, and not fully rely on it,
Yeah.
because it opens up a whole sorts of issues as far as plagiarism and things like
Okay.
that that can really get big companies in trouble. So
Agree.
those are trends that have really exploded in the last couple of years, and larger companies like and Publix's technology is working on how can we use this to our benefit and as a tool, but not, policies against using it as
Yeah.
far as, using it as a writing, as a way to
Yeah.
write, which we're not supposed to be doing. So yeah, so that's, I think the biggest,
Hmm.
challenge and impact that's facing the writing industry as a whole the last couple of years.
Yeah. I can imagine. So now with all of that, how do you stay updated with the latest developments of your field?
So there's like anything else, there's a lot of trade organizations and that keep up on trends. There is like a copy editor association, and they have
Okay.
workshops and seminars and things like that. And then the other tool for us that's useful is the Associated Press, which is basically the main style guide that we use and that a lot
Okay.
of other journalism organizations use, and other companies as well, because like me, a lot of people kind of come up in journalism and then they'll kind of work their way into the corporate world for the reasons I
Okay.
mentioned, that better schedule, better pay, better
Yeah.
benefits, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of people who are familiar with AP style that end up in corporate type jobs like
Okay.
myself. So and AP does is very up to date on trends, and
Okay.
not only for word issues and things like that, but as new words come into play and new like for example, AP will update their like diversity and inclusion guide very frequently, because
Okay.
uh, you know, it's a very changing field, and new things come up and new terminology and things like that. So they will put out guidance as far as that,
Mm.
and anything else really that comes up, and they'll send out updates. And then it's kind
Okay.
of our job to kind of see what's applicable to us, and then we'll bring it to
Yeah.
our management and say, is this something that we want to do? And so those are the resources that we rely on to kind of keep up with everything. And you want to
Okay.
be with us. It's like we have, employees who are in high school working in the grocery store. And then we have people
Okay.
who have been working with us for 50 years, and they're,
Yeah.
in their 60s and 70s, and they're still reading our material. So for us, it's a balancing act of how to, still connect with the veteran employees, and then also, the newer
The
associates as
newer ones.
well.
Yeah.
So, and then to use terminology that they're familiar with and terms and things like that. So that's
Okay.
one thing that's a challenge for us that we try to balance as best we can.
Yeah. So now going into kind of your daily work and your tasks, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is your schedule like and what tasks do you spend the majority of your day doing?
So we have three copy editors who will, and we kind of stagger our shifts. So one will come in at
Okay.
7, I come in at 8:30, another comes in around 9 or a little after. So that way we have
Okay.
most of the workday, the core business hours covered.
Hmm.
Our first person who comes in at 7, she'll pick up anything, that was done the night before that needs to be taken care of in the morning.
Okay.
Um, and then we're pretty much covered until about 6 or 6:30 in the evening. And then also one
Okay.
of us generally we'll bring our laptops home. So that way, if something comes up, an emergency communication needs to go out, one of us is available to,
Okay.
to take a look at something
Yeah.
before it goes out. So we pretty much are, and that's infrequent, so it's not a huge hassle when it does happen. But one
Okay.
of us is around, available pretty much at all times to take care of something if it comes up.
Okay.
But one thing that kind of at the beginning of the day, our digital department will they send a couple emails to the stores each day, and then sometimes
Okay.
our like company-wide communications will go out around 10 a.m. So that's something that we kind of will tackle early on, is that
Okay.
they'll put the draft in the mailbox and then we take a look and compare it to the approved document just to make sure all the formatting's right. It's going to all the people it's supposed to go to,
Yeah.
and everything like that. So that's one thing that we jump on immediately. And then other than that, it's just kind of taking it as it comes.
Yeah.
Different parts of the day or different parts of the month will have different things. If there's like a conference or something coming up that we're producing materials for, we'll take a look at that. And but other than like I said, the core hours are pretty
Yeah.
normal, with the exception of some if emergency has to be taken care of.
Okay.
But the day to day could be pretty much anything, so no matter what everybody's working on, we'll take a look at it and go from there.
Okay. And would you say that this is a kind of, well, is it possible to have it be a remote friendly job, a hybrid job, or do you have to be in the office every day?
Um, we do a hybrid schedule.
Okay.
We do 2 days in the office, or no, 2 days at home per week, and it kind of
Okay.
rotates. So
Okay.
what our company does is that Mondays we're generally in the office. We'll have for staff meeting and things like that to touch base in person, and then our team of three, we kind of work with each other to make sure that one person is in the office
Okay.
each day. So that
Okay.
way, if somebody's in the office and they need to reach somebody quickly, or they have a question, or they just want to drop by our
Yeah.
little part of the office, somebody's there to handle it.
Okay.
But like I mentioned, we're connected with teams, and I mentioned that before we started, but yes, we have teams, and so we're available at a moment's notice, and
Okay.
to connect with somebody either via message or jump on a quick video call or anything
Yeah.
like that. So, and what we do for the most part is, just looking at Word documents or PDFs
Okay.
or things like that. So we're very remote. It's a very, very remote friendly position. Like I said,
Okay.
I've freelanced for some clients who were all over the country. So, and it kind
Okay.
of works the
I
same
see.
way. We
Yeah.
can connect this way or through making comments and documents. And if people have questions,
Yeah.
they can touch base on a call or anything like that. So
Yeah.
yes, very remote friendly. And as the trends have gone, it's like the hybrid is very popular because you can get best of both worlds, where you can meet in person
Exactly.
if you need to, because sometimes it's easier to meet in person and go through things that
Yeah.
way and
Yeah.
develop a rapport with your coworkers. But at the same time, being able to be remote has its advantages as well. So that was one of the things that when I actually took this job was like, it was important for me, to have a
Yeah.
hybrid schedule, because just to cover everything that's going on, and it gives a lot of flexibility. And it's
Yeah.
good that employers are starting to do that and
Agreed.
continuing
Yeah.
it during COVID, after with the COVID wrapping up, but still
Yeah.
kind of having that flexibility.
Yeah. And so now, would you say that there are any busy seasons in this job? And if so, what are they?
I think it depends on the industry.
Okay.
For us, we have a big conference in November where all our store managers meet up,
Okay.
and there's 3 or 4 days worth of speeches and exhibits and programs and all sorts of stuff that that our department pretty much puts together exclusively. So for
Okay.
us, September, October, November is a super busy time. And then December, I would say most corporations, December is going to be a slower time
Yeah.
because of the holidays. But at the same time, you could have companies that, more of like entertainment things or things like that, that where it might be busier around Christmas time. So it really depends on the industry.
Okay.
For us, it's like I said, it's in the fall. but we're kept busy around. My position was
Yeah.
added over the summer, so I was the third,
Okay.
copy editor in our department because they needed
Okay.
somebody
I
to
see.
handle the load when things got
Yeah.
busy. So yeah, it really depends on the industry. But
Okay.
I think a lot of them you'll have ebbs and flows, but it
Okay.
depends on what that company does as far as their
Okay.
peak times.
Okay. And so now to become a copy editor, are there certain degrees or certifications that are truly required?
I think it tends to have a communications background. I think
Okay.
you could do it like with a obviously like with an English degree. And then if you kind of
Yeah.
progress through marketing or communications or anything like that, um, because obviously an English degree, you're going to be very knowledgeable as far as grammar and
Yeah.
style and things like that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it, as far as, understanding audiences and, like I was mentioning, being clear and concise. And so everyone on our team has a communications degree.
Okay.
Um, so I think anything in that field, anything where, you're working with language and you're writing
Yeah.
and you're understanding, that I think tends to work best. So perhaps even like a marketing background, but yeah, I would say
Okay.
general communications or English would be
Okay.
probably the main two.
Okay. And so now, what are some natural strengths or talents that you think someone has to have in order to be a good copy editor?
Um, I think you really need to have a good understanding of a lot of things at a general level, because
Okay.
and the way and to like understand how to research, because there's a lot of times, something will cross our desk that I have no background in, or I'll have no idea, or it might be something
Okay.
about, like the 401(k) program, and there's a lot of technical business jargon, financial terms that you
Yeah.
might not be familiar with. So it's like then you kind of have to go to somebody and get a background on that and make sure that what's being said is accurate and it makes sense. And then to also sometimes be like, to me, this doesn't make sense, but financial, to the financial person, it might. So is there like a
Yeah.
way that we can explain it to where the general person might understand it? Because it's like, if
Yeah.
I don't understand it, then, the person reading it might not understand it. So,
Yeah.
but so we should be doing, a lot of that research to make sure.
Okay.
So I think that, being able to research and have like a good knowledge base in general is a strong trait. And then to be able to multitask and handle different jobs as they come in,
Okay.
because a lot of times, we'll be working on something and somebody might send something that's, an ASAP job, and you got
Yeah.
to switch gears quick and, and get on that and make sure to get that. So, time management skills, being able to multitask, being a clear communicator, because sometimes you
Okay.
might see something that you know isn't right, but you might, it's like you really have to get the point across to the person. And the other thing that
Yeah.
that's really key for us is that we don't want to come across as like the grammar police. You don't want to, like, you want to have a way to say like, this is great, but this might be a way to make it better. Or like we might suggest to say it this way
Yeah.
instead of,
Okay.
you don't want to come across as like the teacher with your red pen, you're like, do it this way, or this
Yeah.
is wrong. You really want to make it feel like a collaborative effort and not just like, because what that doesn't do is then that kind of causes the writer to disengage, because you don't want the
Okay.
writer to feel like, well, they're just going to fix it and then I'll just go along from there. You want to,
Yeah.
if there's something that's an error, like I mentioned, you want to explain it so they understand, so that way they can get better. So our job is really to help the writers improve. So
Okay.
we don't want to see the same stuff, the same mistakes over and over again, things like
Yeah.
that. So we want them to improve and become better writers and clear communicators. So there's a little bit of teaching involved there too. It's not just, like I said, just this is wrong, go fix it.
Yeah.
So you want to really find ways to communicate with them to help them improve as writers. And like I said, make it a collaborative effort, So there's a lot of things that you kind of pick up along the way, little tricks that you pick up
Okay.
that make you a better editor.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of skills that you kind of pick up along the way. But yeah, time management, multitasking, knowing how to communicate with others, those are big things aside from, the technical requirements of the job.
Yeah. Okay, so now moving on to the technical requirements, what are some topics that you think about all day? What are some subject matters or topics that you think someone has to enjoy in order to like advancing in this career?
You definitely need to know the style of your organization. So like I
Yeah.
said, for us, we use AP style, but then we also have a custom style book within that, that tells us how we handle bullet points or how we handle titles or how we capitalize things at certain
Okay.
times. So those are kind of things that you kind of have to know and really get into and enjoy because they're things you see over and over again.
Yeah.
And, one person might struggle with remembering this, or somebody might not use this like, that way. So it's really one thing that you really have to know at the back of your hand is
Okay.
style and when to, a key one is like, sometimes they'll when you have like a series and then people will put and or a comma before and, which is like the Oxford comma, and then some people don't. And then,
Okay.
there's different times to do that. There's
Yeah.
different times to not do it. So those are things where you kind of just have to know it. It's all in the style book and things like that, but it's like
Okay.
that those technical rules and your company
Yeah.
style are really things that you have to know. So that way, if people ask you quickly, you know the answer without having to check. And
Okay.
so yeah, and it's those are helpful. And just any, just general grammar background, when to use certain words and how to spell certain words at different times,
Yeah.
because English is very complicated.
Yeah, it is.
So that's kind of that's the meat and potatoes of kind of,
Okay.
the way to the technical aspects that you need.
Okay. And so now what are some tools or technologies, maybe programs or softwares that you see that you use a lot as part of your job?
Um, So as I mentioned, we do use Grammarly a lot, and then I
Okay.
think which is an outside program that can attach to, Google Docs or Word or things
Yeah.
like that. And then as time has progressed, Microsoft has incorporated a lot of those type of things in their documents as well. So in Word, there's like an editor feature that you can click on. It'll give you like a score as far as spelling and what kind of an
Okay.
audience it's written for and other grammatical things. So that's a tool that we use a lot. And then
Okay.
I think it's just like, your typical your office environment, kind of just a general knowledge of how to use spreadsheets and PDF and PowerPoints and Word docs
Okay.
and navigating through Teams and emails and a lot of things like that.
Okay. So now we want to give our listeners a little bit of advice. So what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in a job like yours do in order to set themselves apart from other job seekers or other candidates?
Um, you really want to be thorough.
Okay.
There's pretty much anything. There's a whole number of things that can trip you up when it comes to editing. So you
Okay.
really want to make sure that you're reading things over a lot. You're asking questions. You're making sure that things are done properly. Like for us, if we have an article where we're featuring a certain employee, if they're at a store, we list their store number, where it is, city and state. So those are things we have to check, to make sure
Okay.
somebody's name spelled correctly and, cross-check it into
Okay.
like type their name in Outlook and make sure it comes up
Yeah.
and it's spelled the same. So just being very thorough.
Okay.
A lot of times with these type of jobs, you'll get a quiz as part of your
Mm. Interview
not
process.
so much
No.
a quiz, but like that was more for like journalism, things like that. But like
Okay.
like an editing test where they'll
Okay.
send you a couple sample articles and you'll have to edit it.
Okay.
Um, and they'll put a lot of things in there, that can trip you up. So I would say be very thorough, be very concise, be very check everything that you
Okay.
can think of as far as where something might be able to be incorrect, and not just like I said in that, well, there should be a comma here, a period there. Like those are things, but like fact
Yeah.
checking and all sorts
Okay.
of stuff. And then as far as, like resume tips, and I think the key is to if you're just getting this from scratch, it's a lot of what you've done as far as your schooling, and like I was saying, your degree and your interests
Okay.
and internships that maybe kind of you have a writing background or things like that. As a lot of
Okay.
times I don't think people come out of school and be like, oh, I'm going to be a copy editor, but it will, if you have a writing background or you've done like journalism or even marketing copywriting, like that all kind of gives you the foundation
Okay.
for this kind of work.
Okay. So now if someone wants to make a career pivot from another career into this one, what do you think is the fastest way that they can get their foot in the door?
Um, if that experience is along the lines of a profession where there is writing and
Okay.
creativity, this creative process, as far as this going through different checks, and I think that's a good way to get into it if you're a word person and you've done a lot of writing, or even if you've done a lot of reading and you
Okay.
understand kind of how to communicate. That's a good foundation. And then if
Yeah.
you have that kind of that English background, I think it's something that you can really get into. Like I said, what I did prior to this part of my career was this is a portion of it, but it wasn't all of
Yeah.
it. But it's like this niche I kind of gravitated towards just out of, enjoying
Okay.
doing it. And
Yeah.
so I think if anybody with any sort of background in writing or editorial is suited to do this if it's an interest to them.
Okay. So now what are some books, resources, programs, or certifications that you recommend our listeners look into if they're interested in a job like copy editing?
Um, I would say there are a lot of online courses as
Okay.
far as copywriting and copy editing, proofreading that you can take that kind of give you the
Yeah.
fundamentals. There's one I remember called Proofread Anywhere that was pretty
Okay.
useful, and I went through that before I started doing this, just to kind of get more of the basics down, because I knew what I could do, but as far as like processes
Yeah.
and style and things like that. And like I mentioned too, familiarize yourself with the different style guides, Associated Press style and Chicago style, and I think there's APA is another one.
Okay.
Those are all different things that to familiarize yourself with as far as background and having a proficiency in.
Okay. So now, finally, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just starting out in your career, what would you tell him?
That's a tough one. Um, I had a lot of fun in what I did and in broadcasting. It was really interesting, and every day was different, and um but I would say that you want to make sure that you set yourself up for finding a place, when you start, that you will be happy with as you get into, your 30s and 40s and
Okay.
beyond. Because when you start and you get a packet of a 401k and all that, and you're like, oh, I'm young, or I got time, or things like that.
Yeah.
And it's really something that if you get into a place that you enjoy and that has stability and that you can grow in, if you can do that earlier the better. Because
Okay.
especially now, it's like you really want to make sure that you're set up for, as
Yeah.
you start to get older and when you're thinking about retirement, you want to make sure that you're all set.
Okay.
Because there aren't as many companies out there that will have a pension or have things like that where you're kind of automatically all set. You kind of have to
Yeah.
be a little knowledgeable and do it on your own. So
Okay.
you want to set yourself up for success earlier
Yeah.
the better.
The earlier the better,
That would be
exactly.
my advice.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, thank you again for joining me on this episode. That's all that we have today. Thank you for sharing your experience. It was greatly appreciated.
Of course. And yeah, I really thanks for reaching out. And I think what you guys are putting together is very useful because
Thank you.
there's not a lot of places that you can go to get really detailed information like this, where you really
Yeah.
get the behind the scenes and asking good questions and things like that that
Exactly.
you're not going to find from a job
Yeah.
description.
Exactly.
So
Thank you
yes,
so much.
thank you.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!